Takashi Yamamoto, the man the newspapers called the Ice Emperor, sat frozen in his chair. A minute ago, he looked like a king. Now, he looked like a ghost. His mouth hung open. His expensive fork hovered in the air. I placed the wine bottle on the table. Click. The sound echoed off the crystal glasses. I looked him in the eye. I didn't look down. I didn't apologize. I switched languages. My deepest apologies, Yamamoto-sama, I said. My Japanese was perfect. It was the formal, high-level language used for emperors and gods. It appears my peasant hands have disturbed your peace, I whispered, leaning in close. But if we are speaking of kings, you should know one thing. A true emperor never needs to raise his voice to prove he wears a crown. Yamamoto turned pale. The blood drained from his face. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Also, sir, I added, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper, the slang you just used to call me trash? That isn't the language of a Tokyo CEO. That is the dialect of a low-level criminal from the slums of Osaka. I straightened my apron. Let's maintain our dignity, shall we? He stared at me with pure terror. He whispered one question. Who sent you?
Please help our daughter get to 1,000 subscribers. Yeah.
Kindly hit subscribe immediately. God bless you.
12 hours. Earlier, I was nobody. The alarm went off at 5 a.m. Rain was hitting the window of my tiny apartment. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. My chest felt heavy, the way it always did in the morning. I put on my headphones. I didn't listen to music. I tapped the screen and played Bloomberg Japan. Yamamoto Industries is down 40% this quarter. Bankruptcy is imminent. I mouthed the words along with the news anchor. My pronunciation was sharp, exact. I walked to the mirror. I looked at the woman staring back. She looked tired. She looked simple. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I put on the black uniform. I buttoned the collar all the way up. I was Sarah Williams, waitress, high school graduate, nobody. I spent 5 years building this cage. I ran away from the corporate world because it broke me. I wanted to be invisible. I thought if I stayed invisible, the world couldn't hurt me again. I was wrong. By 7 p.m., the royal table was a war zone. The kitchen smelled of truffles and sweat. My manager, Mr. Peterson, was running around like a headless chicken. Table 7, he screamed, his face red. Sarah, you're on table 7. He grabbed my arm. Listen to me. The VIP is Takashi Yamamoto. He eats servers for breakfast. Don't look him in the eye. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't screw this up, I nodded. Yes, sir. I grabbed a pitcher of water. My face was a mask. Blank. Empty. Then, the double doors swung open. The air in the room changed. Conversation stopped. Takashi Yamamoto marched in. He didn't walk. He conquered the floor. He was flanked by 2 young assistants who looked like they were about to throw up. Yamamoto sat down. He didn't look at the menu. He checked his watch. He looked furious. I walked over to pour the water. I made myself small. I made myself air. That's when I heard the whispering. Yamamoto's assistants, Kenji and Hiro, were leaning toward each other. They were speaking Japanese, fast and terrified. The contract, Kenji whispered, his hands shaking under the table. We left the physical copy at the hotel. He's going to kill us, Hiro whispered back. If the British investors see we are unprepared, the deal is dead. The company is dead. Yamamoto slammed his hand on the table. Bang. Why are you whispering? Yamamoto snapped in Japanese. You look weak. Sit up straight. Kenji flinches. I stopped pouring. The water hovered over the glass. I understood every word. I knew things nobody else in the room knew. I knew Yamamoto wasn't just mean, he was desperate. I knew his empire was crumbling. I knew he was terrified of losing everything tonight. Most people looked at him and saw a monster. I looked at him and saw a man drowning. Waitress, Yamamoto barked in English. He looked at me with cold, dead eyes. This water is warm. Get me ice, now. He looked at me like I was furniture, like I was a tool to be used and discarded. I gripped the pitcher. My knuckles turned white. I could walk away. I could get the ice. I could finish my shift, go home to my tiny apartment, and stay safe. I could stay nobody. But I looked at Kenji's shaking hands. I remembered what it felt like to be that young and that scared. I remembered the people who watched me drown and did nothing. "Don't do it, Sarah," a voice in my head warned. "Stay hidden." I took a deep breath, and for the first time in 5 years, I stepped forward. I didn't run away. I walked right into the fire. I walked up to Kenji, the terrified assistant. He was shaking so hard the silverware was rattling. I leaned in to pour water, and I whispered in his ear, not in Japanese, in English, but I spoke fast and low. "The business center is on the 2nd floor. They have a printer. Go now. I will buy you 5 minutes." Kenji looked at me like I was an alien. "But, go," I commanded. He ran. Now I was alone with the wolf. The British investors walked in. 3 tall men in expensive gray suits. They looked impatient. Yamamoto stood up, forcing a smile. I could see the sweat on his forehead. He didn't have the contracts. He was naked in front of his enemies. I stepped in. "Gentlemen," I said, flashing a warm smile at the British CEO. "Welcome to the royal table, Mr. Yamamoto has ordered our special reserve champagne to begin the evening, to celebrate your future partnership." I lied. He hadn't ordered anything. Yamamoto looked at me, confused, but the British men smiled. They sat down. The tension broke. For the next 10 minutes, I was perfect. I poured wine. I adjusted napkins. I anticipated every need. When the conversation stalled, I dropped a small, charming comment about the London weather that made the British CEO laugh. Yamamoto was watching me. His dark eyes narrowed. He wasn't looking at me like a waitress anymore. He was looking at me like a puzzle. For a second, just a second, I saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. Then Kenji slipped back into the room. He was breathless, but he slid a folder onto the table. The contracts. Yamamoto let out a breath. He was safe. I felt a tiny spark of pride. I had saved him. I had helped the man I was supposed to hate. Maybe he wasn't a monster. Maybe he was just a man under pressure. I was wrong. The crash. Kenji, in his relief, moved too fast. He turned to bow to the British guests, and his elbow hit the wine bottle I was holding. It wasn't my fault. It was clearly him. The bottle wobbled. A splash of red wine flew through the air. It landed on Yamamoto's sleeve. A tiny, red drop. The table went silent. Yamamoto froze. He looked at the stain. Then, he looked at the British investors. He saw them judging him. He saw his control slipping away. He needed a scapegoat. He needed someone to blame so his team wouldn't look incompetent. He looked at Kenji. Kenji looked ready to cry. Then Yamamoto looked at me. The respect I saw earlier? Gone. Replaced by cold, calculating cruelty. He decided instantly. The waitress is disposable. My assistant is not. He stood up and pointed a finger in my face. "You clumsy fool," he shouted in English. "Look what you did." He didn't stop there. He turned to his guests, shaking his head, playing the victim. Then, he turned to his assistants. He thought I was just a dumb British girl. He thought his words were safe. He switched to Japanese. "Look at her," he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "Standing there shaking. This is why you don't hire peasants. She is useless. She is nothing but air." The twist? My heart stopped. It wasn't the insult that hurt. It was the memory. Suddenly, I wasn't standing in a restaurant. I was 10 years old. I was sitting at a kitchen table, watching my mother cry. She was holding a letter. A termination letter. "They fired me, Sarah," she had sobbed. "Yamamoto pushed me out. He said I was too soft. He said I was nothing." I looked at the man in front of me. The lines on his face were deeper. His hair was grayer. But it was him. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't chance. I was serving the man who destroyed my family. He thought he was insulting a stranger. He didn't know he was insulting Aiko Nakamura's daughter. He laughed. A cruel short laugh. "Don't worry," he said to Kenji in Japanese. "She doesn't understand a thing. She's too stupid to learn anything but serving food." Something inside me snapped. The cage I built for myself shattered. I gently placed the wine bottle on the table. Click. The sound was louder than a scream. I took a deep breath. I felt the Japanese words rising in my throat like lava. "What would you do? Would you keep your head down, take the abuse, and keep your secret safe? Or would you burn it all down to speak the truth? I looked him in the eye.